fairly plainly, Matt, this week we need to talk about how much the bottom of the table sucks, and the fact we've got this. You said to me before we started recording, this record now, is it 6 teams without a win in the first 5 games in the Premier League is a record. I dare say you tempted fate last week. We said, you know what's going to happen with these head-to-heads we had between Leicester and Everton and Southampton and Ipswich. They're all going to end up draws. Bad teams don't win games. Teams down the bottom of the table don't win games. And the points have not gone on the table. Let me lead with Leicester Everton because I've had my say on Southampton Ipswich on the Blue Monday podcast. People know what I think, so you can have your say on that. But Everton again giving up a lead, but it had been a losing streak, so they get the first point. Leicester are kind of in games, but not being convincing, and I'm not hearing good noises from their fans. It's like they've come back and picked up the PTSD from being at the bottom of the Premier League before, and like you said about Ipswich, the new car smell, that's still there. But you talk to Leicester and Southampton fans, and they're like, "Oh God, we're not going to win for another 8 weeks now," or what have you. So, I think I'm more concerned from a Leicester point of view than an Everton point of view. I think we're going to talk about Everton a bit more later in the show. But what was your take on unhelpful 1-1 draw number 1? Leicester 1, Everton 1.
Yeah, it's difficult this because it's all still so tight, and we're not getting a proper reading on where teams might be, because maybe one could be an outlier. That might be Palace, and they might push out. It might be that one of the newly promoted teams suddenly goes and get a surprise win, or maybe even back-to-back wins between now and Christmas. So it's still hard to say. I mean, we said after last week, when we see the next results, context will be
we'll know more.
Key. But we don't know anything. I mean, as a neutral, I know you're an Ipswich fan, Ben, but as a neutral, I must say I love it. I love it so close and cagey. I know you're probably like biting your nails every time Southampton.
Matt, I'd rather there was 6 teams close together than you get the horrible scenario that everyone kind of thinks might happen of there's Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton, and a big gap starts to build.
Yeah, and another thing I could say, probably speaking on behalf of all neutrals when it comes to the Premier League, is after last season, we don't want the same 3 that have come up to go back down. We want to see a competitive fight for survival, and I think we could get that. We've seen draws between Leicester and Everton and Leicester and Palace. So just in those 90 minutes, Leicester have matched those teams. It's difficult, isn't it? Because Leicester were leading at Palace. So we said, do they need to beat Everton to make up for the dropped points? But They were trailing this game against Everton. So they've rescued a point in a sense. I mean, it feels to me that under Steve Cooper, Leicester are going to churn out nearly a point per game, maybe just under it. They might get to about 34, 35 points, and they're going to be so close. So once again, it kind of kicks the can down the road. We're still waiting on a big victory, like a statement result where one beats the other, and you feel like that might really change things. But everything's just so finely balanced. So, looking at the 2 games, Southampton, Ipswich, and Leicester, Everton, sorry. I feel like the 2 bigger losers are Southampton and Everton because they were leading and they were the 2 teams that were pointless before this. So they still sit behind the others. I mean, Everton were away from home, so you can maybe make an argument it was a more difficult game in a sense. But I think Southampton were really kicking themselves with the late goal they conceded. And they played quite well as well, Southampton. I did predict Ipswich to win, so I'm pleasantly surprised by Southampton's positive performance, and they've got a big game on the South Coast next week that we'll come on to later. It's just so finely balanced, Ben. You can't really pick anything. But like you said, as an Ipswich fan or a Leicester fan or a Southampton fan, if Palace, Everton and Wolves don't win anytime soon, it keeps them all together.
Totally agree. I've got 2 things to say, and I'll get your take on both of them. One is we answered the question on Blue Monday of a draw. We say unhelpful draw, but when nobody's winning, draws obviously become more helpful. And you start to look at the defeat column, and you've got Leicester, Palace, and Ipswich with 2 defeats, and Saints, Everton, and Wolves with 4 defeats. So that says something. And I agree with you. At 94 minutes before, I mean, look, there's a load of context around Ipswich Southampton, but in isolation, it's the 95th minute. You clear a corner, and a deflected shot flies in the top corner. So in isolation, it's a hard one for Southampton to take. And I think, do you agree with me? You go from Ipswich would have been the big losers there.
Yeah.
Southampton, out of the 4 teams we're talking about here, if you include Leicester and Everton, Southampton then become the big losers because of what they've lost in that last minute. It was going to be the first win. They were going to jump up to 3 points and compete on Ipswich in the head-to-head. And now you kind of look at it, and if you're an Ipswich fan, which I am, you say, got out of Dodge with a point with the home game to come. If you can pour away at your rivals and then have the home game in the second half of the season, it's looking nice. So a lot turned on that deflected Morsey goal, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing. If you were following the games live, then you know who the big winners and losers are with the late goals. Because if you look at just the results after the games have all finished, you'll be like, okay, 1-1, everyone's where they are. But I've seen footage of the Ipswich fans coming out of St Mary's, bouncing around as if they've won the game. And it could be a massive point because it's not just a point game, but it's 2 points denied against Southampton, who are also going to be down there. Real deflating one for Southampton, especially with what I would say is they've had reasonably okay fixtures so far. I'd have thought they'd maybe picked up some more results because they've had Forest and Ipswich at home. They were playing 10-men Newcastle as well. Missed a penalty against Manchester United. There's quite a few things that are all building up now and just sort of like getting really frustrated. So they need to bounce back soon. Otherwise, it starts turning negative and maybe pressure on Russell Martin. I know there has been already, but I don't want to see him go. I'd like to see his football work and Southampton have a fighting chance. But yeah, going back to Ipswich, don't mean to say negative, don't mean to sound negative, sorry, but if you could just stay within touching distance the whole way through the season, that's fine. I know it could be a low bar this
above
season.
above the line at the moment, and it's a 2-point gap as well. So this is the thing we're struggling with, Matt, as Ipswich fans. Haven't won a game, but if you stop the clocks now, massive success, because you're above the line.
Yeah, that's literally it. And you have to deal with the conditions you're put in. A couple of years ago, there might have been a high tide where you needed 37 to stay up. It could be 32 or something. It could be
25.
It could be something really low. So if you want to kind of at least be in the middle of the box. Like I say, at the moment, we've got 6. It might be that one moves out. It could be that one falls in. I mean, it's certainly worth saying at the moment that teams before the season started that you might have thought could be close, Brentford and Forest, have had good starts. Bournemouth not really involved once again. So at the moment, we're looking at this 6, and I'm really excited to talk about the upcoming fixtures for this weekend. But yeah, if you're an Ipswich fan, considering as well that Southampton and Leicester have got that more Premier League experience, I think Ipswich holding their own. And I think as well, looking at the way the fans are talking here, I think the experience that Leicester and Southampton have had, like the not so nice experience in the Premier League, when they lose a game, it's like, oh, this again. Whereas Ipswich, because it's been so long and it's so much positivity and a novelty at the moment, even when they lose or draw, they're keeping their heads up high and feel like there's some positivity going into the next game, if that makes sense.
Well, and the defeats have been against Liverpool and Man City, where you go, fine, whatever, far better teams than Ipswich are going to lose to those two this season. I'll just close this out by, you said in the other segment, back-to-back wins. And with the way this is going, any team at any point in the entire season that wins back-to-back games and sticks 6 points on, if you're talking about 30 points being a big deal, that's 20% of 30 points in 2 games, isn't it? So if anyone can do that, the only issue for me is, in terms of the promoted teams, is you would make Palace, Everton and Wolves far more capable of knocking out that quick bang, bang 6 points than the promoted team. So we're still here, Matt. Hopefully we're not going to be telling this tale for week after week after week of no wins, but at the moment we are. It's a record-breakingly bad start for 6 teams down at the bottom of the Premier League.